If you've been paying attention to my Twitter and Bluesky account,
which you should,
then you'll know I launched a third version of my beta, which has immersive sim mechanics. What if you were playing a game and you thought, can't I just break this door? I mean, it would be way better than to find a key. Well, what if I told you that you can do that in my game? Have you ever looked at a chest and thought, what if I could hide in that chest like the cardboard box from Metal Gear? Well, now you can. This is what emergent gameplay is. Or at least I'm pretty sure. I mean, when looking up what an immersive sim is, it made me realize I'm very bad with definitions. Speaking of which, what is an immersive sim? Well, I don't know and neither do you. There's a lot of debate surrounding that topic, and I think Timothy Cain said it best.
There's not just a lot of debate over what an immersive sim is. There's a lot of debate about what anything is. It was to show you that something as simple and physically available to everyone on the planet as a cup can still suffer from being hard to define. A cup is a concave object that can hold liquid. And he wrote it on the board and then immediately turned around and read, so like a swimming pool is a cup. And, and the kid was like, no. And he goes, it is a concave object that holds liquid. It meets your definition perfectly. And so the kid was like, So somebody else went, it's a concave object that can hold liquid that you can hold. And so the professor added that you can hold to the end of the definition and then turned around and said, like a bucket.
Again, even still, Tim has his own opinion on what an immersive sim is. So honestly, it's up to you on whether my game is an immersive sim or not. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to call these immersive simulation mechanics. If you know much about my opinion on my game, it's that I feel like RPG games shouldn't even really be called RPGs, when it feels like there's barely any role-playing. Granted, before people comment this, yes, an RPG doesn't need role-playing, but I feel like it's a missed opportunity to put in the genre. Anything I say about RPGs doesn't mean people should listen to me, and even then, I'm really only referring to RPGs I've played. Please don't take what I say too seriously. Again, much like immersive sims, definitions are kind of hard to, define, so honestly, who cares if I don't think it should be called RPGs? Anyways, on the topic of RPGs, it's one of the reasons why I feel like adding immersive simulation mechanics help, because now the player feels more comfortable to roleplay. Not only that, but roleplaying can be hard to predict, because see, if you roleplay as an avian, that implies you can fly. But if the game isn't programmed with flying in mind, that means you will now feel limited, which discourages role-playing and you start limiting what you can do. Much like D&D, you can do a lot of game-breaking stuff, but that helps encourage role-playing. For example, if you're role-playing as a complete, utter lunatic, filled with the most wildest ideas to get past areas, you might be crazy enough to break down a solid steel wall, and you technically can do that. See, since this is a very broken game mechanic, you need to balance it. I was heavily inspired by Felix Tip's video. It showed me just how experimental D&D can be and how well you can balance it. It was also an inspiration for why I wanted immersive sim mechanics in my game. Basically, the way Felix balances the ability to do anything is using the rules yes and, yes but, no and no but, which are basically ways to prevent the player from going overboard. In order to understand better, let's give some examples. This will only be in the full game, but let's say you want to get off this island and go to another island, even if you don't have a boat. This will be a no-but situation. So no, you can't swim in the water or fly over the water, and when you try to, you start to drown. But something magical happens. A big, beautiful-looking catfish comes to your aid and saves you. He is admired by your effort for trying to swim, so he decides to help you swim across. Now you basically got a free boat. You can now travel anywhere. Isn't that awesome? It's like that avian example I gave. You have to keep in mind who the player is role-playing as. Let's give some more examples. If you want to break a door, depending on your role, this will be a yes-but situation. Because you can break the door, but you alert enemies to your location, meaning you have a higher chance of encountering one. And you also got a huge splinter from the door, damaging you for 2 HP. If you want to break down a wall, but you get a bad roll, this will be a no and situation. So no, you can't break down the wall because it's too much for your strength. and when trying to, you damage yourself for 4 HP. This will also only be in the full game, but if you want to fight an NPC, depending on your role, this will be a yes and situation. Yes, you attack the NPC, and they stumble back, tripping on a rock, sending their head down into the ground, knocking them unconscious. I want my game to be an immersive sim, not just because I think it's cool, or again because I feel like it helps with role-playing, but because I know this will change the mindset of my players and make them realize that anything is possible, so that they never have to doubt themselves. If you don't know what I mean, let's take Super Metroid as an example of limiting the player. I know not everyone is gonna like hearing this, but the section where you have to get rid of the glass tube with a bomb was insane to me. They try to hint to you that the glass can be broken with the platform above, but see, not everyone is going to see that hint and think they can break the glass now. They would have never thought that the game designers would want that. When I first played it, I thought that was just a part of the scenery, not just something I could interact with. Plus, it's not like I could break anything else in the scene, unless you count secret blocks. So I start doubting myself. Glass tube only looked like those hallways in Mega Man games to me. Also, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but another problem is that there's only one way to break it. It's using a super bomb. Not even missiles break the glass. That's why I'm not a fan of this puzzle. If Super Metroid was an immersive sim, it'd be easier to know what to do. I'd probably know to use a super bomb or really anything if it was an immersive sim. If I knew I could destroy other things like platforms, I'd be more likely to blow up the glass. When I found out you had to super bomb it, I was angry that it was the solution, this whole time. Hey, look, maybe you're a Super Metroid fan, and please tell me how much you love this game. I don't want to dominate this video with my arguments alone. I also realize it's a SNES game. It can't do everything, and neither is it for everybody. However, I only use Super Metroid as an example for how modern games with more power can change these progression designs, and show that not everyone will understand it because it suffers from doubt and confusion problems. Not because it's a bad game. I understand that, to a degree, that's what people like in this game. A problem I have with Metroidvanias is that I'm constantly thinking, do I need an item to pass this, or am I doing something wrong? However, some people like that. However, for me, it feels like I have to always explore more, in hopes of just finding an item to pass a certain area. Or sometimes I look at something and I think maybe there's another way around, and then I just get so confused and start thinking, am I doing this wrong? Do I need an item? I can't find out what to do. And then it feels like all I'm doing is just wasting time. See, I feel like a good secret would be something from Crash Bandicoot 2. There's this section where there's a staircase of nitro crates. However, you start to question, why would the game developers put a staircase of nitro crates? And I know I don't need an item. It's right in my face. Let's try and see if we can get on it. And what do you know, it works. Granted, maybe my game can be like that for some people, but in most cases, I'd assume they won't experience that. Hopefully what I say will age well. Also, times change, and depending on the games you play, it shifts your idea of how games teach you. When playing Metroidvanias as a kid, the concept of backtracking never occurred to me, because the games I've played never had backtracking, or heck, they even discouraged me backtracking. Again, not everyone is going to agree with me, and that's okay. I feel like game designers, however, should be more thoughtful of how people think, and experiment with a new progression system. As a game developer, not only are you a programmer, but you're also in a way a psychologist. You have to get into the player's head.
I'd like to take you through the first few levels of the game and make some observations about how they guide the player through the process of learning the game. If you look at the beginning of Doom 2016, it starts the same way. You wake up and you're put into the action, 3 zombies you gotta kill. But after that, it can be a bit confusing what to do. I'm not saying I was confused, but I've shown the game to several people who are unfamiliar with Doom, and even unfamiliar with first-person shooters in general, and they walked around this area for minutes on end, trying to click on all these consoles with bright lights, and not even noticing that the suit of armor was something they could interact with. I had to tell them, and puts them at a door that can only be opened by grabbing the shotgun. Again, I've seen plenty of inexperienced gamers overlook it. They don't know what to look for, and they don't think about being able to pull a gun from a dead soldier's hands, because you can't do that in other games. Doom Eternal does all this much better. Again, you're presented with 3 zombies that you take out with your shotgun, and there's a very visible ammo pickup in the corner. The visual design of this place is excellent because the dark brown environment gives a great contrast to the items like ammo pickups, explosive barrels, weapons, and lets the player really take note of items that may interest them. Really smart.
If you have a game that limits what you can do, the more your player doubts themselves on what they can do, or they'll get confused easily, like what Under the Mayo showed. Players may even start creating strategies just to figure out problems easier. Like a well-known problem in click adventure games is where people just click on anything in hopes that it does something, because they know not everything they click is important, so hopefully they find something. Some people might say, why not have a strategy guide if you're so worried about the players? Admittedly, I'm thinking about adding this to Fate's Gamble, but there's a problem I need to consider. A strategy guide is a very easy way to cheat my game. Much like a tutorial video, it doesn't feel fun to just watch it in order to know what to do. There needs to be a more fun way to implement a strategy guide. Also, a game that requires skill cannot be cheated by a tutorial video. A game with intelligence can. There's no tutorial that just suddenly makes you win a platformer level in one go, because it still requires that you have skill. But a tutorial on a puzzle game gives you the solution easily, because it only requires intelligence, which you won't need if you're cheating. And if I do have a strategy guide, I'd rather it be in the game, and even make it require fictional money you get to make it more balanced every time you use it. Also, there's a chance Fate's Gamble could have a small fan base, which means I'll be making it for a small amount of people. Who cares if people can't beat your game? A game can still be good even if you haven't beat it. I mean, you're not wrong, but there's a question I have about that. Does that apply to bad games as well? For example, whenever I talk about a game I don't like, people get mad at me because I haven't finished it. They say, how can you judge it if you haven't even played the full game? So many people say that, but why doesn't the same apply to positive views on games? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I never hear, how can you praise it if you haven't even played the full game? I've never heard anyone ever say that. It seems to only apply to negative views on games. Secondly, this might be personal, but as a game dev, it sucks to think players won't even beat your game. Because if you create your game just to realize someone can't experience the full thing, it can really get to you. I'm not speaking for every game dev. I'm sure not every single one will agree with me, but it sucks to think not everyone will experience your game. So you try to minimize that as much as possible. Lastly, it starts making you think, was my game too much for the player? Is my game badly designed? It can make you feel like maybe the solution to beating your game isn't as obvious as you intended. No player is the same. People are gonna play your game differently, and with immersive sims, I feel like the people who play differently is actually a positive. This is why the game company Valve playtests so much. It's basically their secret weapon. However, for a small team like mine, I can't just playtest this game over and over again. I think I would go insane if I did the amount of playtest Valve does for their games. Game development isn't about making the best game ever. Granted, I'll try to make this game as best as I can, but you see I can't do everything. See, this is why not all game developers trust players. As much as gamers may like when game devs trust in them,
And so do I from time to time.
to solve something, not all game devs can do that. That's why we have tutorials that teach the player directly. As much as the players may hate tutorials where you have to read what to do, you have to realize it's pretty important for some games. Not every game has to have a level 1-1. People criticize Doom Eternal for its tutorials, but that's because they can't trust the player to learn important game mechanics.
Throws the Arachnotron at you and introduces the player to the concept of enemy weak points. Again, I strongly approve of the inclusion of optional tutorials. A lot of people who play games are people who work 50 hours a week and come home to play a game for a couple hours, and they aren't veterans. Casual gamers are important, and I'm glad that id Software put tutorials in to explain the mechanics. The mechanics are crucial to your enjoyment of the game, and if you don't want tutorials, turn them off. There's no better way to handle it than the way they did it. We should be wanting people to learn and appreciate the mechanics of Doom.
It's the same reason why there is no such thing as perfect difficulty for games. Again, no player is the same. To give a list, immersive sims create experimentation, more specifically better problem-solving skills, limits brain-dead strategies, helps with difficulty, creates better role-playing, and, while not always, limits the use of wanting to cheat. Well, sorry for the rant. Anyways, let's get back into the game. Another thing about immersive sim design is multi-use items. For example, my item flares. They work a lot like the flares from Signalis, but can also be used to create light and dark areas. The chest, as I said before, can be used as a way to hide from enemies. However, it can also be used to stun enemies. Of course, not everything can work that way. Not all items are multi-use, but I would like to if I can, considering that this game is an immersive sim. Speaking of which, if anyone in the comments would like to suggest an item or some kind of immersive design, please let me know. At first, I wasn't even going to have items in my game. It was only because I got inspired by a video about game design that made me inspired to play Metal Gear. And it opened my eyes. I used to hate games that had items as a way to progress. Wow, you have super strength! Except it's really only used to pick up a boulder and that's it. I feel like these items are just keys but with extra steps, rather than using it as a fun tool. Although, after playing the first Metal Gear, I really liked the pacing of the game, with its items. Even if they were simple, I liked how it was used. Like, holy shiz, I got like 10 items in the span of an hour. Actually, probably less than an hour. It made me realize I don't hate this form of game design, but that the progression part of it entices me. I mean, it's still kind of BS at times, but this game definitely had an impact on how I'm gonna make Fate's Gamble. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please download the VX Ace version of my game and consider subscribing if you want more updates on my game. Also, I have many forms of social media that you could check out. If you want more short form videos, then check out my Instagram or TikTok. If you want daily updates on my game, except primarily Sundays, then go to my Twitter or Bluesky. Take care!